Nvidia stock was down roughly 2% today. Now, looking around, I found two interesting things that every Nvidia investor should know. The first is there are the reports of Huawei developing a new AI chip. The second is something dealing with Nvidia's B300 platform. Now, I also want to take a closer look at some recent news impacting TSMC and some recent laws that might prevent them from sending the most advanced manufacturing here to the United States. So let's take a closer look in today's episode.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for their subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so just a quick look, we could see Nvidia was down roughly 2%. One of the biggest reasons I believe the stock is down today is there is a lot of fear coming in from Huawei, right? So there are reports from Bloomberg that Huawei's new 910D AI chip will have its first batch of samples out in late May, with development still at early stage. Huawei hopes that this will be more powerful than Nvidia's previous H100, which was released in 2022. Great thing to remember that this is a platform that has been completely succeeded by the Blackwell B200 and soon the B300 Ultra AI GPUs. So as an Nvidia investor, am I worried about Huawei at the moment? The answer is no, not at the moment. At the moment, I believe Nvidia will continue to dominate. Obviously, in China, that is a whole different complete reason. There is kind of a void that has been created by Nvidia not being able to sell in China at the moment their H20 chip. So in that market, obviously Huawei, in my opinion, if this continues, will continue to gain market share in that space. And is that the end of story for Nvidia in the Chinese market? I think the answer is uncertain. I don't know. If eventually some of these export restrictions get removed or kind of start at a new slate and Nvidia is able to send the best of the best chips out there, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if that ever does happen, I would think Nvidia will easily regain market share from Huawei again. Now, I've talked about this in a previous live stream. For me, maybe the biggest issue with Huawei kind of developing more and more AI chips is not necessarily anything that will happen in the short term of things. So in the next year or 2, 3, or 4 years, it's not something as an Nvidia investor I would be worried about. Now, in the long term of things, if there is this void where Nvidia can no longer supply a certain market, it is going to push Huawei. It's going to push developers to develop on Huawei's ecosystem, and then that creates a stronger moat that is harder to tackle. So again, that's not something that I'm worried about for this year, for next year, and it all depends on some of the changes that happen with export restriction, the diffusion AI law, and so many things that are up in the air, in my opinion, where it's something to keep in the back of my mind, but not something that I am scared of at the moment. Now, the second thing that we do have is Nvidia reportedly kicks off its B300 production preparation in May, boosting kind of TSMC's 5 nanometer and CoWoS L, which is the advanced packaging needed for the B300. So first, if they are, these are rumors. And let me just say, as a Nvidia investor, I don't think it's necessarily bullish or bearish. I feel neutral as a long-term investor if these reports are true. If these reports are true and Nvidia is kind of releasing the B300 a little bit faster, that's okay. They're going to be able to do it. I wonder if maybe their customers are pushing for the B300 system a little bit faster and Nvidia just wants to run up on that advancement or that demand as quickly as possible. I do believe that at the end of the day, Nvidia is still going to be supply constrained. So even by releasing a new product faster, it's not like they're going to see the revenue jump dramatically, right? Because if not, at the end of the day, the B200 would kind of have filled some of that appetite. So for me, Nvidia right now is more supply constrained and is more of a manufacturing ceiling than an actual demand for new products. So this is pretty cool. Now, but nothing that would kind of say, hey, look, this is the reason I need to buy Nvidia stock price. There's other reasons to be extremely bullish on Nvidia. Nvidia kind of pulling these things, if the rumors are ahead of schedule by maybe a few months, is not, in my opinion, something that I would go and say, look, this is the ultimate bullish thing. It does show, and this is something that, again, we already know, is Nvidia is innovating at rapid levels. Nvidia is still pushing this train like there's no tomorrow and is fully accelerating. But this is something that we've known from Nvidia in the past. Now, there is one thing that is changing here, and based on reports, there are discussions that Nvidia has decided to switch from this Cordelia compute board structure, which features 2 GPUs and 4 GPUs, to the Bianca architecture used by the GB200, which pairs 1 CPU with 2 GPUs. Now, again, in my opinion, as an Nvidia investor, this isn't anything that I would be worried about. Regardless, we are still going to send some chips. We're going to sell plenty of Blackwell chips. Now, if you want to know a little bit more of the reasoning behind it, I actually had OpenAI kind of have an easier way to explain it. So right now, like they mentioned, the GB200 is using a Bianca architecture, which is you have a motherboard, and that motherboard can contain 1 CPU and 2 GPUs. The new one that they were trying to change into was the Cordelia, which has 1 motherboard, and in that 1 motherboard you had 2 CPUs and 4 GPUs. Now, obviously, by just looking at that, you can already kind of understand some of the perks behind it. So obviously the perk is fewer boards, cables, and quick disconnects per rack. You also had fewer usage of certain kind of networking solutions to help a lot of these GPUs talk to each other at faster levels. And by having a lot more products onto 1 motherboard, you also had the ability to have more coherent memory for CPU and GPU on a single board. So there were some benefits out of that. Now, it does seem like during the process of all this, there was kind of some errors that were found, especially with some signal to noise that happened with the changing on one, because in the Bianca board, you kind of did a lot of soldering. Everything was kind of soldered directly, where in this other one, you had kind of like a socketed XSM style puck, where you did lose it was easier to swap parts but introduce signal integrity headaches. And it seems Nvidia was like, look, we don't really need to change it for this generation, so we are not going to kind of make this rapid change right now. If this is true, we're most likely just going to end up changing it most likely in the Rubin platform, where they still have plenty of time to make sure there's not any hurdles. So I think Nvidia, if they do shift it back, is pretty smart. I believe eventually we are going to see this Cordelia board come into the platform market for Nvidia, as it does provide some great solutions. And when we start to go into the new type of boards and kind of the new systems out there, it is going to be crucial, especially as you're trying to pack a lot more systems into one server. I mean, eventually we want to go to like the NVL 574, I believe is the number. So when you go into things like that, you need to be more real estate constraint, which is something that Cordelia board will help kind of improve. You need to have less power, less kind of cables, less everything in there. So eventually that will be the move. I think we're most likely going to see it with the Rubin. I think Nvidia, if it's true, is more deciding to just play it smart. It's not a needed change at the moment, because with this GP200 and GB300, there's still going to be NVL72 systems. There's no changes happening there, that there is a necessity to do it right now. It gives them time to pretty much push it and save it for later. So if you do hear maybe any bearish thesis about Nvidia kind of going back to their old setup, I don't think it's a bearish thesis. I think Nvidia just wants to keep the puck moving here, and they want to fix all these changes before making any real implementations, and we still have plenty of time for the Rubin platform. Now, the final thing that we are seeing is Taiwan plans to tighten controls over exports of advanced process technology, as well as outbound semiconductor investments, reported by Economic Daily. The new legal measures will enforce the N-1 technology restriction. So N-1, N being kind of the newest node, -1 being the previous node. So in theory, for TSM, they can't send the most advanced manufacturing node to the United States to be manufactured manufacturer there. I think TSM, this is more of like a political thing than anything else. Obviously, by TSM building the most advanced chip in land, it creates some form of political strength and some kind of bargaining chip, no pun intended. And it kind of forces people to care about Taiwan in theory, right? So I think it makes sense why they're doing it. Is this necessarily bad for the United States for sort of these companies building chips? No. I mean, right now, TSM is already producing 3 nanometer chips. That's their most advanced chips. The ones that are being built in Arizona right now are 5 nanometers. And that's where we're seeing high volume production right now. That's where we're seeing the Blackwell. That's where we see the Hopper right now, right? It's not until the Rubin that we're going to see the kind of the 3 nanometer and below. So for the most mass-produced vehicle or chip, you kind of actually are already working on the generation behind. So not having the most advanced chip, in my opinion, is not necessarily the worst thing. So I think this is actually, in theory, a smart move for Taiwan in general. I see why they would do it. For TSM is crucial. For the United States, I think, again, the most important chips for a lot of these companies are actually the previous generation, the 5 nanometer, the 4 nanometer, and not necessarily the 3 nanometer. So I don't think this is anything, again, that I would worry about if I was a TSM investor, if I was another type of investor, because I think most of their customers would have foreseen something like this coming. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.